Hey, everybody. Welcome to Off the Cuff, All Things Healthcare. My name is John Kublank, and I am honored, nay, blessed, to have the opportunity to sit down with my great friend and one of the smartest human beings I know and has a heart of gold, Miss Arlene Maxim. How are you, Arlene?
I'm good, John. Thank you so much. It's always exciting to find out how you're going to introduce me. I love that.
It really is a pleasure for me always to get to be with you, and we have a really exciting guest. But before we get to that, we do have an announcement. Arlene, can you talk about what we're about, a little bit about this video?
What we're going
Yeah.
to talk about today. And on behalf of myself as an RN and our industry, I just wanted to express our condolences to Joyce Grayson's family and the friends at Elara Care on her tragic death just in the last couple of weeks. And also, we got to remember Douglas Brant. He was also murdered December last year, just before Christmas, I believe. And we have some statistics that we're going to give to you today about how often some of these tragic things are happening, but more often the things that end up not actually causing death, but accidental types of things, intentional types of injuries to staff members. And we are so vulnerable going out into these homes. And I have gone out. I mean, I don't just do consulting. I actually have gone out into homes and done home care. And I know, and I've been placed in situations that were not comfortable for me. So I know what that's like. And Officer Manis today, John, I think you can introduce Michael, but Officer Manis today is going to give us some tips on what we can do to protect ourselves, because we are going out into places that we have absolutely no idea what we're going to find once we open that front door. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to John to get started.
Yeah, and we're going to play a little video real quick, just so everybody has an understanding of what's going on. If you haven't heard,
state legislators to call for increased protections and security while on the job. This comes after the brutal murder of a visiting nurse in Willimantic over the weekend. Let's get straight out to Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Marcy Jones, live in the capital city with more. Good morning, Marcy.
Good morning, Kate. Well, according to her family, nurse Joyce Grayson was a beloved mother as well as grandmother. She was very warm and caring. She dedicated her life to helping others, and she actually died doing what she loved. However, many argue she should have never been put in that position in the first place. Now, recently, lawmakers actually passed new legislation to help better protect healthcare workers in hospitals after they've seen an uptick in violence. However, following the death of Grayson over the weekend, healthcare workers and state lawmakers are looking into what can be done to increase protection for visiting nurses. Grayson was killed while visiting a client at a transitional home in Willimantic Saturday. What was supposed to be less than a 10-minute visit ended in her brutal murder. Police say the suspect in this case is registered sex offender 38-year-old Michael Reese, who was arrested while carrying some of Grayson's belongings. Reese is currently facing charges including probation violation, possession of drug paraphernalia, and larceny. While the investigation continues, big questions remain, like if and why Reese and Grayson were left alone. Back out here live, the group of lawmakers as well as healthcare workers will rally at the LOB to really have their voices heard. This is all happening at 2, and everybody is invited to attend. Reporting live in Hartford, Marcy Jones.
That's a lot to hear, and we're going to dig into that. But right now, I just want to introduce our guest, Officer Michael Manis, who has served in the United States Air Force and Security Forces for 8 years, was deployed to the Middle East twice. During his service to our country, he was assigned as security of defense aircraft and is currently working in law enforcement in the Nashville area as a field training officer for 2 years, and for the most two recent years, a SWAT team member. Michael is a certified active shooter response trainer and firearms instructor. Michael, Officer Manis, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Welcome.
Well, thank you for the invite. I really appreciate being here.
We have a lot of really amazing guests, in industry experts in healthcare, but this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to cross over into a different sector, but one that is so important. Arlene had brought this to my attention. The whole world is hearing about this most recently, but this is not a new situation for healthcare workers or for individuals at all. Self-defense is a huge issue that we have going on. And you're here today to give us some helpful hints, tips and tricks, things to be looking for, things that we can do to keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely, and I think it all starts with a culture shift and kind of recognizing that this is a threat. We can't keep our head in the sand as far as what dangers lie out there, not just for law enforcement, but for nurses as well that are making these home visits. That we can't pretend the evil's not there anymore. It's something that we need to address at all levels, just to make sure that everyone stays safe.
Yes. Yes. When I'm thinking about what this first incident that we just watched on the news article, what comes to mind from my position is company liability, right? Where is the organization? Where am I as the administrator? What should I be looking for or putting in place to make sure that my employees are safe? Because I mean, we don't know what we're walking into at all, but we could potentially have some checklists or things to be thinking about while we send our staff in there.
Oh, absolutely. I think that on the company standpoint, that there needs to be kind of two paths. The first one is what policies and procedures we have in place to keep your personnel safe, recognizing that this is now, a threat, and we need to support our workers in a way that allows them to be safe when they're doing their job. And then also we need to provide the tools that allow them to be safe as well. So, hitting on things like that pre-employment screening, I think that is so important to address, not only what health benefits or what health issues they're going to be dealing with when they're on scene, but let's talk about who all's in the home, and then anyone that has residents there. Let's run a quick background check. I know in our area I can go to the court system and just search first name last name, and then from there it will give me a list of criminal incidents or activity that they're a part of. For example, I'm dealing with someone who was taken to jail for aggravated kidnapping and aggravated domestic. Um, Anyone can go online, search through the courthouse records, and pull up those charges and see that this is the type of threat that individual is. So I think that having some form of background check, it takes 5 minutes. It's no cost to the company, but it at least will give employers an idea of who they're sending their workers to.
That's interesting.
Arlene,
I just had an attorney tell me that he was working with an agency that was doing exactly that. And that does need to be part. I think I know you're absolutely right that our policies and procedures that we have in place in most home care companies do not include employee safety, these types of things. And you're right, we can't put our head in the sand. I think that's another thing that's so very important here that we don't want to talk about it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in the past couple of weeks say, well, we don't want to scare these nurses away. We have a horrendous staffing shortage issue right now across the nation. And, I talked to the folks that have responded that way. I've said to them, well, it's not just home care that this is an issue with. This is happening in hospitals and doctors' offices and emergency rooms. This is all over. The home care people are more vulnerable because they're going into you don't know what lies beyond that front door that you walk through. And I think and I think you face that too as a SWAT team member and as a police officer. You don't know what's beyond that door when you open it up. And I guess I would like for you to cover some of the things that nurses or clinicians, therapists, anyone who's working for the home care agency, what types of things should they be looking for just as they're driving up into the driveway? There are some clues we can pick up.
Well, and before that, Arlene, one of the things I'd like to say too is you had said pre-employment screening, and Arlene, you had talked about the regulations about what healthcare workers have to go through as far as to go into a patient's home. But is there any responsibility now that we're bringing this to light, that state organizations should play, that we should make it a standard of policy and procedure that if we have to do background checks on our employees, right, we should at least look up the patients in their home because it's a real risk? Or is it going to always be up to the agency to do this, and whether or not it's within their scope or what they believe is a risk? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
From
Well,
from my
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, please.
Go ahead. Please.
Well, for one thing, I'm thinking of with this pre-screen that we're talking about is, like I was saying, we need to figure out who's in the home, and then anyone that is listed as a resident, they need to have at least that criminal check done on them to see if there's violent tendencies. Another thing would be, what mental health issues are we facing? Because we're seeing that as a major uptick in law enforcement right now. Is we're dealing with people that are in some form of mental health crisis. And so I can talk to the same person 5 times out of 6 and they're completely fine. And then that 6th time they're experiencing a mental health crisis. They're in the middle of, a manic episode, or they're facing some sort of schizophrenic episode where they're a completely different person. And they don't recognize me, and I don't recognize beyond the physical features of who that person is. And that can be very dangerous too, because when we go into something like that, we usually have that rapport. So my guard's down a little bit more than someone I'm facing right out of the gate. And I'm sure that's the same way with nursing. Once you've been to a house a few times, you get that comfortability. But if we're facing some sort of mental health challenge, I think that's important to know that you may not be dealing with the same person that you've dealt with in the
That's right.
the past. So having that background as well, because as I was saying, when I walk through the front door, I've already asked dispatch, all right, what's our address history? Do we have a history of domestics? Are they flagged for any type of mental health issue? What's being said on the line? So I'm getting real time feedback as I'm going in. To go in as a nurse without the body armor, without the weapons that were issued, is, I mean, so much respect for the industry in general. That's crazy, and I mean, it's fantastic that there's people out there willing to do that. So in order to keep everyone safe, I think the company needs to accept that responsibility and add these factors into some sort of pre-screen, just to make sure that as a nurse they understand who they're going to be dealing with and what they might face.
Yeah. I wonder too, back to what Arlene was saying, once you start to go to the house, you've been to the house once or twice, what are we looking for? And what are some of these red flags where we should be now, as the employee, back to the administrator, the director of nursing, whomever that's in charge, leadership, saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable. And is what should be acceptable? Because I think we should be listening to our employees when they say, hey, I'm uncomfortable. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be I saw a visible weapon or they physically hit me. That's kind of too late, right?
Absolutely. So what I would suggest is, especially on this initial visit, you go up to the house and we're looking for entry points, exit points, windows, doorways, and how quickly we can get to those if the need arises. Um, so we walk in, and is there furniture in the way? Where am I going to be performing, these medical tasks? Is it going to be in a back bedroom? Is it going to be there in the living room? Where's the patient at? How is the house set up? Do I have to walk by 3 other doorways in a bathroom to get to the patient? And then once I'm in the room, is it set up to where I can maybe work with my back against a hard wall to the door? That way I can see if anybody's coming in. Or do I feel more comfortable having my back to the door but eyes on the patient? Be that way, if something does happen, I've got a rapid escape. And that's one of those things you've got to judge. If there's more people in the home, I feel more comfortable with having my back to the wall, so I can just kind of pay attention to that door in case somebody decides to walk through. Now, if they're the only one home, I'm going to keep myself between the patient and the door. That way, if they do decide to act up, I can make that rapid escape. On top of that, we're looking at not just for weapons, but what type of drugs are in the home. That's something that they'd mentioned on the news article, that there was drug paraphernalia. So tools to ingest, I believe they were on like heroin or something like that. Are we seeing signs of drug use in the home? Used needles, tinfoil, um, pipes, things like that, to where, okay, when I go in today, they may be under the influence of something. We've got the signs there, so it's never going to not be zero. So we've got to be aware of that. Another thing that we're going to be looking for is, bulges on them. If they're laying there, do they have, something tucked in that they might try to go for? Why, if they're laying in a bed or on the couch, why do they have a bulge on their hip? Let's investigate that a little bit further as well.
And while we're talking about this too, this is national. This is a national issue. There are some states, like my home state of Texas, where there a bulge on a hip or somebody carrying a weapon, fairly common, right? Not necessarily common in the home, and maybe not necessarily common in every sort of situation. But what are some questions that we should be asking to determine, and maybe that are appropriate and customer centric, that are asking like, hey, is that are you licensed to carry? Do you have any firearms? What are these questions? Because we may not be able to look up anything on the internet to see that. So we're in the home. What questions are we asking the owners to find out some of this information?
So one of the things I like to do is, if I can tell that they're carrying, just like, hey, what kind of gun you carrying? Most firearm owners will like to talk about what they are. And if you come at it as I'm not accusing you, but hey, let's just talk about guns. And even if you don't know anything about guns, act like you do, act like you're interested. That way it takes the guard off a little bit, and they'll want to talk freely about it. Like, yeah, right now I'm carrying this, Sig 9 mil. I've got these other ones in the safe, or I've got this one here for personal defense. And again, not come at it in an accusatory term, but more as let's just talk about guns. I'm into guns too. That way it gives you an idea of how many may be like in the home. But you've really got to be careful, because here in Tennessee, we're a constitutional carry state. So you don't need any permit to buy a firearm, to own a firearm. You got to go through the standard background check, and then it's yours, and you can carry it in public. There's certain restrictions, but for the most part, you're allowed to just have a gun. There's nothing wrong with that. And 99% of all gun owners are law-abiding citizens that are just carrying it for their protection. So it's all about how you approach it. It's kind of that we use verbal judo, where a person may be amped up a little bit, but we're just going to try to bring them down. Let's form a bond here and try to disarm them a little bit, as far as not physically, but hey, we're friends here. We're just having a conversation, and that way we can get much more information. Then why are you carrying a gun? That's you shouldn't be doing that, kind of making them feel bad. They're not going to want to open up at that point.
We got a comment off of LinkedIn. John Lee O'Reilly said, watch facial expressions, which may indicate a seething anger or mental stress that's about to become violent. How are you looking at nonverbal cues, kinesics, to see, not just what they're saying, but, maybe what they're expressing?
Yeah, so that is a great statement, because that's indicative of an imminent attack almost. When their facial expressions change, they become very tense, almost like a frown. They start breathing heavily. Their face will become flushed, and then they're going to start doing something what we call blading. So if I'm just standing square, I'm in a relaxed position, I'm talking to you. But if I start to amp myself up, I'm going to almost turn my chest and my shoulders at a 45-degree in a more athletic stance. This is what we call blading. And this shows that I'm going to make some form of athletic move. Another good thing to do is to wash the hands. If they become, where their fists, something, we're going to want to try to de-escalate quickly, because we're on the brink of an attack coming. And at that point, that may be time. All right, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. Call law enforcement. Let us get over there and try to de-escalate. But again, that's great. The facial expressions. If they're looking around the room, they're kind of getting an idea. If they start to size you up, so instead of making eye contact, they're looking you up and down. Okay, they're sizing you up. Let's see, do they think they can take you? That's kind of what we're looking for. But again, this is more immediate.
Sure. And I think we are talking about drug seeking or, individuals that, may have an addiction problem. I think those are some of the more common, ways to look at it. But there's a lot of reasons why people could get aggressive. But there's a lot of things that you can say, that may not have anything to do with it. So I don't think it's necessarily, a rhyme or a reason why anybody would do anything, and we shouldn't assume that, but we should be cautious and be looking for the real signs that the body is saying, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Well,
Arlene, I know that, so go for
ahead,
it.
John.
Oh no, I was going to go to you. I know that you have a lot of experience with situations.
Yeah, and I've had myself in bad situations in the past when I've been doing home health visits. But one of the things I think we can't forget is that guns aren't the only risk here. There are knives. Knives are probably even more common than a gun would be in some circumstances. And I think that we just, as an industry, I think we just need to take our heads out of the sand and decide on what we're going to do as far as policies and procedures. Perhaps some of the state organizations do want to adopt a code of some sort to indicate, what agencies should be, organizations, not just agencies, but home healthcare organizations that are going into the home hospice organizations, what they can do to protect their staff members. I was talking to John yesterday, and I said, hospice organizations they're required to have a volunteer program. Well, why couldn't we get retired veterans or retired police officers to escort some of these places, particularly that one that Joyce Grayson was in? That would
especially
have been,
areas that are bad.
yeah,
Right.
that would have been an absolute perfect place for an escort and have somebody actually go in with her and and get that visit done if that's what we need to do. But I also think that for more reasons than safety, I think that there's a real need to screen these referrals. And I think the intake process in home health, there needs to be, like you said, the background check, perhaps the background check of the patient and any maybe folks that are living in the home. I think that's another important thing. Now Douglas Brant that was murdered in December, that was a grandson that he was taking care of the grandfather. It was a grandson with mental problems that caused his tragic death. And so it's not just the patient, but anyone living in the home. And this is happening so often because these younger folks and very able-bodied folks and able to injure a nurse or a therapist, they're living with their grandparents and their parents more often than we've ever seen before. And a lot of them are, addicted to drugs or they have mental health issues. And I think, again, since COVID, I think that's escalated. We have a lot more of the mental problems than we did in the past. And so we need to reevaluate everything we're doing as far as the intake process, as far as our policies and procedures in the organization regarding safety for our staff members. And that needs to be a very specific part of our orientation with our staff, even maybe role playing with those types of things.
Well, I can tell you, I could tell you that I've been in enough organizations to know that there is no standard for safety training in the home. And I've been, when researching this topic, looking over what's been going on, in 2016, there was a statistic that said 70% of all non-fatal work-related injuries were done in the healthcare setting. Now, let's say that some of that's falls, and my father was a paramedic and he hurt his back because he was lifting up individuals. So it's not all just violence, but you can look and there is story after story, not just in the home, but in the physical hospital of people being beat, stabbed, killed. I mean, it's becoming more and more of an issue where we're already dealing, like you said, Arlene, a huge labor crisis in our healthcare workers, specifically around, frontline staff, nurses, physicians,
Mhm.
aides, those sort of things. But I think what you're saying in hospice, thank God, I love hospice so much, has already said that we need psychosocial support, but we keep taking away money out of home health and out of healthcare for any sort of non-healthcare related, definitely mental illness issues. So how do we find that support for these patients that are in crisis, their families that are in crisis? It seems like an uphill battle.
It really is, and especially in the law enforcement community, there has been a big push for better training on how to deal with mental health episodes. Our department has just partnered with the state, and we've gone through critical incident training, and it's a CIT. It's a 40-hour class where it is focused on different mental health issues and topics and how to approach each one, and kind of, I don't want to say combat because that's such a aggressive word, but how to really deal with these folks that are in some form of crisis. And I know that there has been a push throughout the state of Tennessee and kind of nationwide of, we're seeing this more, so how do we deal with it? And talking about hospice, that's interesting because you're dealing with people that have just lost a family member, so those emotions are raw at that point, and that's what makes domestics for law enforcement so dangerous to go to, is the emotions are right there on the edge. They're so raw, so it's important to realize the signs. They're looking to place blame, and hospice is an
Mhm.
easy target because they're not there as life-saving. They're there as, we're going to keep you comfortable. And so there may be that threat of, well, you over medicated my grandpa, or you didn't do enough to continue life, when really that's not their mission. And so when hospice workers go in, they need to really, it's key because they're going in all hours of the night, right? They're going in most of the time. Home health care, you're going in 9 to 5, correct?
Well,
Yeah.
where
pretty
where
much most
where
times.
hospice will go in, they're what, on call 24 hours a day.
All
So
day. Yep.
you may be going in at 2 in the morning with a family that is suffering the loss of a loved one, and they're looking to place blame. So it's important.
I was at a house last Tuesday at 11 p. I left my house at 11 p.m., got back home at 1 a.m. So I was gone between 11 and 1. I'm a male. I wasn't even thinking about issues, dangers. I'm thinking about taking my patient what they need. But then Arlene, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago, and then Arlene was like, "We got to do this. We need to do this episode." And I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh." Number one, I could have sent my nurse, my employee out there, and anything could have happened. And number two, anything could have happened to me just because I wasn't even thinking about it. It's not that we should be scared, we should be prepared.
Prepared, yeah.
Absolutely.
We
So
do have some. We have some questions, Mike. Just I don't want to. I don't want to leave people away. We got like 4 comments, so I want to get to this. Jim Peeler asked, and I don't know if we know of any specific ones. And Arlene, maybe we can do some research. But are there any panic button devices, or maybe even policies and procedures from y'all two that might be good or work in this scenario? Thank you, Jim.
so I can say on our end, if you take everybody carries some sort of iPhone or Samsung device, but they're all set up now to where if you hold a certain button for a duration, it's going to call 911.
Yep.
I know a lot of smartwatches also have that feature, so you're not even required to be on the phone. If you're in that sort of situation where you're starting to feel uneasy that things may go south, go ahead and call 911. You're not going to get in any trouble. I suggest a lot of people, I don't think we're utilized enough as 911 calls, especially for your line of work. So just, you know, use that emergency feature on your phone, keep it in your pocket. It'll just be an open line. We get dispatched, and I can't say this for every agency, but I know here with ours, we're required, whether they hang up and say, hey, everything's fine, we still go out there and check.
Mhm.
So get that emergency button, hold it down, and then if you can just talk to the patient, hey, I'm sorry we're here at, and then throw the address out there. that will give us an idea. That'll help confirm the address. If you can talk a little bit, hey, I'm sorry that you're going through X, Y, or Z. Can you please put that weapon down, whatever it may be. If you can talk to the patient, but try to give us, some information and what's going on, we'll be able to help you out a lot easier than if it's just a silent line, or you hit 911 and you're trying to talk, but they force you to hang up. So just, again, panic button.
And there's texting now to 911 as well, correct? I believe in some areas.
There is. So the way that works is they use a pinging feature where they triangulate off of cell phone towers. It's not always accurate.
Gotcha.
And so that's the downfall. Is they may send us to an address and we go knock on the door. No, that's not us. Or they can only get maybe a block radius. So now we're sitting here. We're trying. It's hard to search every house.
Sure.
There are some companies, John. There are some companies, John, that are coming out. There's one company that has a device that you put on the back side of your cell phone. If somebody grabs the cell phone away from you, which an attacker that might be one of their first things that they do is they don't want. Oh, I just threw mine. They don't want you.
Get out of your phone.
They don't want you to have access to getting help. But as soon as that hits the ground, whatever that device is, it notifies somebody that where you are and what's going on, or they can hear you for some reason.
And it looks like, Kathy, there was some other feature, a walk with me feature that's out there. And I looked up some, and there's also like, panic button actual that you can give to your nurses. I'm sure it's, either cellular, Bluetooth connected, something. There's lots of really great technology out there that one button push and you're notifying. But I think going back to what you said, Mike, and I'm definitely going to reiterate this to my staff, y'all are all the experts. If you feel like the police need to be involved, call them. Do not hesitate. Do not hesitate. Your life is way too important. But then we have a comment from John Leo Riley. He says, that's why it's so critical to have an idea who else is living in the home, and the home care personnel need to be empowered and encouraged to do what they're about to face and walk into any moment since of something is off before walking too far into that home. Absolutely. I think, we talked a little bit, just going back, we talked a little bit about, pre-screening, intake, background checks. And just to be clear, we're not talking about, needing permission, run their social security. You can literally go online in your county and search these people's names on the internet, and they will come up, especially egregious actions, right, Mike? I mean, we're talking the bad things are going to show up. They're not going to be hidden.
Absolutely. So everything that I do is public record. So you go into the county where I work and just type in, whatever county court records, and it gives you the option to look up both criminal and civil. We're not too worried about civil because that's, person versus person. We're worried about criminal actions. And then you can go in, and once you've got the patient name, you can type in John Smith. And then part of, that screen process, we've got birthdays, we've got socials, which socials aren't listed on the court website. That's not public information, but you're going to be able to whittle down who you're talking to or who you're going to go see, and be able to identify if there's a worry, if they have charges of domestic assault, or they've got any drug charges, and all of that is out there for public record. It doesn't cost anything, and it takes 5 minutes of research. And then something else that I wanted to kind of hit on, and this isn't so much for the company, but for the nurses that are going to be going out on scene. Facebook stalk these people. It is amazing the open source information that you can get just on someone's Facebook. So if you get and you're looking for someone, just look them up on Facebook. You're going to see what they like to do, what their hobbies are, who they hang out with. And it's not necessarily, they're not filtering what they're putting out. It is amazing the information that we get from people just through their Facebook posts. So that will at least give you an idea of who you're going to go see.
I've never thought about that. That's a really good recommendation. I had not thought about that at all.
Yeah, the social medias are great for background information on people.
Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely going to start looking at that. And we were talking about social media. This is another way to look at this sort of thing. Is can also, can threats come from family members, perhaps an angry or
Oh,
jealous
sure.
spouse? I mean, especially in the hospice, we talked about that angry child, family member receiving home care, and they feel they deserve or receive care, medication, especially the medication supplies. There's a million reasons why somebody is going to be upset, and it doesn't matter if it's logical or not, right? It doesn't matter if your family or your employee did it or not. I think one saving grace right now is that most, in my experience, home care, there's lots of video cameras. I get a lot of video camera evidence from my patients, from people saying like, this is what your staff did or this person did, which is good. But on the other hand, where things are not videotaped, a patient's going to say something, do something, there's no rhyme or reason. And maybe Facebook, social media, looking up, we're going to be able to see some of those tendencies. But once we're in the home, is there? And I was watching that video, Arlene, so this is why I'm thinking about it. Mike, Officer Manis, when we're getting in there and we have no other choice, this patient is coming at us. They are throwing punches, obviously not a gun, but let's say that they're trying to hurt us in some way. What are the first things that we should try to do as a person to try to get away from these dangers?
So what's funny is when Arlene breached this topic with me about, safety, is I went and I looked online as far as kind of what the environment is that nurses feel. And the biggest thing was that everyone was scared of discipline. I don't want to fight back because I may get in trouble. I may lose my job. I don't feel comfortable carrying, pepper spray because that's against our policy. So the first thing they need to do is realize that the job no longer matters. It is getting out of that situation alive. So they have to flip that switch. And it's now, you've got fight, flight, or freeze. And the best for someone who's not been training, that may not have the skills, would be the flight. Let's try to run. And that's why it's so important once you get there to understand the layout of the house, where your escape points are, and try to create distance. There are some tools that I would recommend to create distance. The first thing would be, and I've got one here as an example, it's a Streamlight Wedge. It's a high lumen flashlight. That way, if someone is coming at you, all you have to do, flip that switch, shine the light in their eyes. Because when it comes at us, what do? We turn away, we close our eyes. It disorients them just a little bit, and that may be enough time to be able to escape. But if that's not an option, the thing that I love to carry more than anything else is my Zebra F701 pen. Because what this is, it's full metal body. It's got a clicky top. It's a fine point, so it writes nice. Nobody's going to look twice at me carrying it, but at the same time, in the hand, strikes, it's now a weapon. So if I'm being attacked and I've got no other reason, I've tried to run and I just can't, I'm going to be using a pen and I'm going to try to hit strikes.
And if a nurse does not have a pin, that's technically part of their uniform, is it not, Arlene? I'm just saying.
And that's why I went with this. I absolutely love. You can ask the guys that I work with that. These are the only pen I carry on duty, because if nothing else, I know I'll have this with me. But we're looking at soft tissue areas, so the eyes, the nose, the ears, around the neck and under the arms are really going to be all points that we're going to try to attack first. Really focusing on the nose and the eyes. If I can get a couple strikes to the nose, that's going to cause my eyes to water up. I'm not going to be able to see as well. And then obviously, if I get a couple good strikes on the eyes, it's going to have the same effect. Again, we're not looking to choke them out. This isn't MMA where we're trying to tap them out or anything like that. We're just trying to get them disoriented enough to run, to get away from that house. And then once I'm outside, I'm yelling as loud as I can, help, help, call 911, trying to get the whole neighborhood involved, because I do not want someone to just look out and go, oh, they got it. What's known as the bystander effect, where everyone else believes someone will call 911. It's just not going to be them. So make as much noise as possible. That way we get a lot of attention. You may get someone trying to come out and help, but just, it's not quiet time. It's not, oh, maybe I can reason with them. No, they've made their choice. Now it's time to fight back.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about getting the layout of the home too, because that's actually a responsibility that we have when we're doing our OASIS assessment. When you're doing the HIS, you need to take a look and see what's in the home, where the different places that you'll be caring for the patient are, and so it gives. I mean, we've got a really good excuse for doing that. We're trying to. That's part of our assessment, so we can find those areas for escape pretty easily, and. But so can you give us some links where we can get some of this equipment, Michael?
Yeah. I'll send you some links that we can. It's Amazon is a great place. I know I get all these pins on Amazon. They're $6-7 a piece. I believe my flashlight was about $60, but it's rechargeable, so you don't have to spend money on batteries. And like I said, it's very thin, very small. I just keep it in my pocket. It's got a little thumb activation, and I mean, it's very bright.
I think the non-lethal aspect of that too helps with policy and procedures for a organization being able to purchase something like that, because essentially for an organization you don't want to weaponize your staff, because that would take a whole nother level of training. But a light, that's protection, non-lethal, and again could be the difference between you going home safe or us having a
not
situation.
Going home. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about like pepper spray and mace in a nursing bag? What are those helpful?
Those would be extremely helpful. I don't know as far as what the policy would be. Maybe that's something that may need to be rewritten. But again, I would carry it even if it was maybe against policy, because it's worth having that extra layer of defense. Mm-hmm. And then I'll deal with the repercussions, but at least I'm alive to deal with those repercussions.
Right.
And what I would recommend is, if you go buy one, buy two, and practice with it. Go home, go a well-ventilated area away from everyone else, but pull it out and actually spray it, because that way it'll give you an idea of stream pattern, distance, and actually manipulating, because all these different pepper sprays have different safety mechanisms on them. So
the last thing you want to do is walk into a situation and
yeah, exactly. Now you've just helped them out. But you want to become familiar with your tools. Absolutely.
Interesting.
And I think another thing with one of the other products that Arlene, I'm not gonna spoil it, but one of the other things is, it might be the neighborhood. It's not even the family. It's not even the patient. But there are healthcare workers, home care workers that go out into just neighborhoods that there was a young man not too long ago. I think it was about December of last year, that was walking home from his shift from the hospital in Chicago and was shot at a stoplight. They thought it was misinformation. Obviously, that has nothing to do with healthcare, but their neighborhood that you're in, you have to be aware of what's going on. And there is some backpacks or some clothing that could be helpful in these situations, correct?
Oh, absolutely. So I sent Arlene a link it's Premier Body Armor. They make level 3A inserts for backpacks. And so what it is, it's just a sheet of body armor that you can slide into your laptop case. And I'm going to back up here and I'll show you, because I've got one right here. So normal backpack, but because of the nature of my job, I run a hard plate, which would be with rifle, but just regular body armor. It slides in, and then that way, if I'm wearing it on my back, I'm walking home, I've at least got some ballistic protection on my back. Or if I'm I'm at the job and, I'm approached with someone with a gun, all I have to do, slip it on here, slip it on my other shoulder. I now have ballistic protection on my front that's going to protect my vital organs. And we're talking less than $300 for a sheet of ballistic armor. I think it's well worth it. I've talked to my kids about possibly getting them for their backpacks. It's another layer of protection. It's non-invasive. You're not going to show up looking, like the SWAT team, but there's that peace of mind that if you need it, it's well worth it.
Absolutely. We have some more comments I want to get to. Mr. John Lee O'Reilly said exactly right. That's why we have the right to get home safe, is what he meant to say. And again, why personnel need to be empowered and encouraged to walk away if they have the sense to see something before getting in too far. Miss Laura Wilson, she asked, what was the name of the flashlight again, Mr. Officer Manis?
Yeah, so this is the Streamlight Wedge flashlight. Surefire is another great company that makes that's really important that you look for high lumen flashlights. They don't necessarily need the strobe effect. That can be beneficial if you train with the strobe, but sometimes that can disorient yourself as well. But just something that has high lumens that you can shine in someone's eyes that will distract them enough to create distance.
Wonderful. And then we have another question. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name because I will mess it up, but they were asking, what was the name of the pins? I know it was Zebra, but what was the actual model?
F701.
F701. I apologize. I couldn't read your name there. That's embarrassing. And then we have, and this was interesting, Officer Manis. John Lee O'Reilly said he personally recommends silly string gel over pepper spray because it minimizes getting affected by chemicals and probably hurting the patient. And again, home health patient, hospice patients, maybe not their family in those sense. That might actually not be a bad recommendation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the only thing that I worry about with the gel is that it may take a little longer to affect the area if you don't get a good shot. So with the aerosols, it's more likely to get through if they try to block it with their hands. They can also, they'll ingest it through their nose and their mouth and kind of excite those, the saliva glands, the snot, where with the gel, it may take a little longer to affect that area, especially if I don't get a good hit and it's blocked by the arm, or if I get it too high on the forehead. So just again, if you decide to go with the gel, make sure that you practice with it and that you're proficient with the aiming. But any of them is a great tool when used properly.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've been talking about, but we haven't really discussed is, again, where does training come in all of this? It's all awesome when we have a policy and procedure. It's all great when we have, this overarching idea of what to do. But how do we train? How often should we train? And, what are the areas or maybe things that we can do outside of work to get some additional training if we feel like we need it?
I am a big fan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think that it is set up perfectly, especially in a home healthcare environment, because you're dealing a lot with close quarters, choking. It's less strike based and more joint manipulation. So I think that just getting out there and learning the basic techniques, if someone's on top of you, the most effective way to get them off of you, or if someone gets you in a chokehold, where to place your hands to be able to break that chokehold effectively. Judo is another great one. I know that there's a few people now. Chuck Myers has started a jiu-jitsu class that's focused on healthcare and healthcare workers. I'm not real familiar with what his training is, but I know that in kind of the research that I had done, his name came up quite a few times. Also, there was a Gracie, which is pretty much the name in jiu-jitsu, but there was a Gracie.
I saw some of those videos.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And just getting out, and it doesn't have to be daily. It doesn't even have to be weekly. If you train once a month at a reputable jiu-jitsu, facility, you're going to pick up things to defend yourself. And then what I like to do is, I've got older boys now, one's 16 and one's 14. I wrestle with them. Just, hey, let me work on this. So I'll have them grab me from different ways, and it gets me that practice of, okay, well, I need to move this hand here, or maybe I need to reach around a little bit deeper. So with your significant other, when you're at home, you're sitting on the couch watching TV. Hey, I'm going to act like I'm dressing a wound. at any point try to get me in a bear hug, try to take me down, and then work on defending that.
Hmm.
That way, the first time that you encounter any of this shouldn't be live when your life depends on it. You should have experienced, these type of situations in training when it's controlled. If nothing else, you're going to learn how your body reacts to that stress. That's very important. Is to, okay, I'm now getting attacked. I need to lower my heart rate. I need to control my breathing because I do not want to get so excited that I'm gassed in the first 15 seconds.
Well, I think that's for me. Like I've had situations where I've been put into high stress environments, and if I'm not practiced, my whole body will shake uncontrollably, which that causes me not to be able to pay attention. Uh, you know, we keep talking, and this is what training. Where should the company, as a home care agency, as a healthcare agency, is it going to be enough to do an once a year annual training? I don't think so. And I think that's where I'm really coming back to. It seems like we should have almost quarterly, if not monthly, in services on self protection, or adding that in to the core of what we're doing if we want to see some difference in these statistics.
So I know that there's a few companies around here, not necessarily healthcare, but there are companies that have partnered with local jiu-jitsu gyms and they have corporate accounts. So they go in, they sign the waiver, but then they fall under the corporate account. So the company will pay for that hour long training. They can use it up to X amount of days a month, and they can go in. So if you've got someone that's really motivated, they can go in and they can really, I want to work on my blue belt, and they'll go in there. Then you've got others that, like myself, we're so busy with, wrestling schedule and football and soccer that I can only make it once a month.
Mm.
That's perfectly fine. But again, it's no cost to me. I can dedicate one night a month to go in there and learn a technique on how to get someone off of me or how to break that chokehold.
Yeah.
So I think that if companies started looking at it like, I'm going to loosen up the control a little bit and not necessarily direct people to take these classes, but I'm going to reach out and partner with a reputable gym, and then we'll just cover the cost, but we're getting that effective training.
And I know you're not a lawyer, but being in law enforcement and having such a vast understanding of the law, negligence or responsibility for the company to send their employees in, there has to be something there, right? I mean, we're not going to be able to just say, like, I didn't know anymore, when we have these tools at our disposal, correct? I mean, where is it personal responsibility? Like we said, like, I don't care what policy and procedure is, I'm going to hold the pepper spray, versus the company should be providing that pepper spray if you're going into a house in this zip code, right? I mean, we sort of have that information now, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's more beneficial that if a company says, we're going to equip you with the tools and we're going to teach you how to use them correctly. Because at the end of the day, if I go in and I have to use pepper spray to defend myself, I'm a representation of that company. I may be opening that company up to a lawsuit. And now we don't have any policies that dictate how to use it or when it's to be used. Um, so I think that actually saying, okay, hey, look, this is what we need to do to protect our staff. So we're going to write a policy, we're going to issue it, and we're going to train on it. That way, when they're faced in this situation, they know how to react. And now you've got something that says, look, they hit the policy on the head, and so now we're not liable at all. But I think, like the story that we watched at the beginning, it was a documented aggressive drug user who had violent tendencies, and they basically sent that poor lady in blind, and that's not okay. There should have been flags. It should have been maybe more than one. We have a responsibility. We've got to take care of this person, whatever. Let's send two staff members in,
Mhm.
something like that. At the end of the day, we're talking about people's lives. It's worth that little bit of extra cost to make sure that, you know, I'm taking care of my people. And I really think at the end of the day that if a company is going above and beyond and it's a good place to work and they show that they really care about their employees, I think you're going to really, like, even though there's a nursing shortage, you may have, people knocking down the door trying to work for you because they know this company has my back.
And I think I really do think we need to take a step back and not look at the normal labor model, right? The normal everyday routine home care for hospice or episodic view for home health. And yeah, maybe for home health, it makes that patient impossible to take care of. And this is something that I really wanted to talk to. And I know we've already been going for an hour, so I don't want to go so much longer, but I'm such a big heart. And like, your grandson is the crazy person. No offense, grandson. I hope you're not listening, but you need care. Yes, you're a sex offender, right? And you had dangerous tendencies 35, 45, 65 years ago, but now you need care. Like, there is an opposite side where we're not taking care of the most fragile people. And I'm a Christian, I believe in helping everybody. Everybody has the opportunity to, redeem themselves, but at what cost, at what risk? And it's like a hard balance, right? And what do we do? Maybe it's just sending in that second person, maybe it's training, but I don't think the answer is not caring for them.
Absolutely not. And there was John Riley, brought up it. We've got a right to go home safe, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have, I think, above all, is have the policies and have your staff's back when they walk into a home and they say, you know what, this is not okay. They're already aggressive before you have that incident, but just, I trust my staff enough to know that right now they don't feel safe. Allow them to walk out and we can revisit with better security protocol. And I really think that, right there, yep, a normal, regular, determined address, 2-person. I think that's perfect. That I trust my staff enough to go do the job. So if they're not feeling safe in that situation, I have that right or that burden to make them feel safe.
Yes, it's the responsibility.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we run into in home health and probably in hospice to some degree is that nurses, especially psychiatric nurses, they think they can handle situations that may put them in an unsafe situation. And I think administrators, executives in the organization need to really stop and think about how to handle those things. And like I said in the beginning of this, I think we should not be. I agree that everybody deserves care, but we shouldn't accept every referral that comes through our door. We have to. If
our organization can't do the 2-person visits and are not set up for success, we shouldn't take them just for the money.
Yeah. I think we do have to have a proper orientation. I was going to tell you that there is a company, and Michael, I want you to talk about the company that you have as well. It's called Gentle Response LLC, they're out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And this is a retired policeman who's put this together. And he does role play where he brings in folks and they actually do role play in the organization. And he teaches them how to respond to different circumstances, and he sets up the situation, and then they have to respond. So things like that, and then ongoing training, like you mentioned. Not everybody's going to go out and get self-defense training. I can tell you, I wouldn't do it because it scares me just to get the training. But I wouldn't do it. So I'm sure that not everybody is going to run out and go get self-defense training. But I think that we do have to provide the tools. We have to have policies and procedures. I think our state and national organizations have to take on some responsibility in recognizing that this is a problem. It's not to make people afraid to be in this industry, but it is a problem. We have to deal with it. Now, how are we going to do that? Having those tips on, making sure that you're safe once you get in the home. How do you get out of a bad situation if you're in a bad situation, and do the best we can. A lot of that, everybody probably knows I work for Access. It's an EMR that has expanded so drastically. We have a lot of training and certification programs, and some of those programs are talking about safety and things that you should do. training. I mean, there's a lot of online courses that you can take on those types of things as well. But I do like the idea of the role play and having an organization come in and actually set things up as though you are, like at the mall not long ago, they had a shooter training. There's live shooter. They pretended there was a live shooter in the mall, and what did everybody do? How are they going to react? So I think it would be good for our industry to take on something like that and show that responsibility that we have, do everything we can when things happen, when these horribly unfortunate things happen like this, that at least we can show that we've done the best we could on our end. And staff members need to make better decisions on places. I mean, some of us take things for granted that we have to go in because it's our job. You said we'll lose our job. Well, I want to save my life. I don't necessarily, our job's not going to be important if my kids don't have a mom or a grandmother to deal with. Yeah.
Exactly. And I will tell you, one of the biggest things that I see that gets more people in trouble is pride.
Mm-hmm.
If they would just check their pride, check their ego, a lot of situations could be negated. So when you go in, instead of sitting here and thinking like, well, I'm a better nurse than that, so I can talk them down.
Right.
Just realize that you're now in an unsafe situation that is probably going to get worse. It is better to take that step back and then reassess at a later date in a more secure manner. Don't be prideful and think that, well, I can handle this. This is nothing, because you're just working yourself into a worse situation.
Right.
And then as far as role playing goes, I would challenge the administration to be involved with that role playing, those exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Act as role players. Maybe get in and run a situation, because I can't tell you, as an active shooter, instructor, how many times I've taken seasoned officers, I'm 10, 12, 15 years on the job, that have been doing it all, and stick them in an active shooter scenario, and they completely forget and they freeze up, or they do the wrong thing instead of relying on their training, because even though, yes, hey, this is a situation, it feels real to them, and their body reacted in a way that they did not expect. So I think that anyone that's doing this job needs to be put in that situation in a controlled environment to at least see how their body's going to react. John, you said that you start shaking uncontrollably. That's hard to negate on scene. You can't, okay, I got to take some breaths and really calm myself down. That's hard to do when that threat is still active.
Sure.
So if you can figure out, this is my body's response, and then that also is kind of a wake-up call, like, I don't want to be put in that situation again, so okay, maybe I need to take a step back now.
Mm-hmm. I heard somebody say just recently, and this is something I think we all need to adopt, that's change your mindset to change your outcome. And I think that's so important that we adopt that and work with that, because that's what's going to change our industry as far as safety of our employees are concerned. We have to change the way we think about things. And you're absolutely right, Michael, that you've got to, you think you're so cool and you can take care of all of these things, but it's, you're putting yourself in jeopardy, and you've got to remember you have a family at home that loves you and they want to see you come back home. You face that every day. I know that. And, but for nurses, we do. We think we can do just about anything. And we because of our big hearts and because of our mindset, we don't necessarily put ourselves in really safe situations.
And not only that, it seems like there's an apprehension to do violence when violence is needed.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes,
I know that
absolutely.
can be hard to hear in,
Yes.
a lot of careers is, okay, well, I'm not really a violent person. But once you're faced with a situation where violence is needed, you cannot shy away from it. And that's going to be something that everyone has to, yes, change your mindset to change your outcome.
Yep.
Once I am to the point where I have to fight, it's not just one or two strikes. It is, you keep going until the threat is neutralized, whether that be where you can make an escape or that you have to knock them out. You get into a position where you can incapacitate them. It can't just be, well, I was scared to hurt them, because now you're fighting for your life. And so you have to be comfortable with violence in that situation.
Right.
We got another question, Officer Manis. Do loud whistles or noisemakers work as a distractor or a way to give some space? What are your thoughts?
So I've seen a few. They look like little pagers that will emit a loud noise. Those can work absolutely because they try to cover their ears. Again, you're just looking for anything that will distract them enough for you to escape. It's better than nothing, but you also have to understand that a lot of the population has hearing loss, and especially at certain tones. So something like a loud whistle, I know if I'm wanting to hurt someone, a whistle isn't necessarily going to deter me. It may bring more attention, which again is a benefit if
Right.
there's more people around. But if I'm in a home, I think carrying a whistle, and then trying to put it up to your mouth is you're
Right.
trying to do too many things for
That's right.
not a whole lot of gain. But having a box that can emit a loud noise, absolutely. But just remember that you're going to be subjected to that same loud
That's
noise. So it may it may not work as well as you want it to.
or just make sure you train with it. I mean, oh my
Yes.
gosh, like I like this. It's for me. I'm hearing it from myself in my administrator hat. I'm like, these are all great ideas, but when are you going to find the time to implement? And then, oh, yeah, just take this, guys. Y'all are going to be safe, and then your employee still ends up in a really bad situation. Why? Because they didn't know how to use the really cool tool that you bought them to keep them safe, and it ended up backfiring or whatever. And I know for me personally how that would make me feel, and I would be twice as devastated as not doing anything, and I would already be devastated not doing anything. um, there is a lot of responsibility in everything that we do. I think it takes a special person at first place to be a nurse and to be a caregiver, to go into these homes, to be in these facilities, taking care of these patients. They're already subjecting themselves to viruses, diseases, all these sort of things. And now, in the age that we live in, we're having to put ourselves in and to protect ourselves from these things. So I can't imagine what these frontline workers are going through. But at the end of the day, we've already talked about a lot. I think just to round it back out, we have to just keep talking about it. Keep it top of mind. This
Take
is
the head out of
not
the sand. That's
going
exactly right.
away.
Yep.
This is not going away. This. If anything, we have seen more and more and more instances
Yes.
of our frontline workers getting into dangerous situations, with the curve of reimbursement going in the opposite direction on everything. It makes it even more difficult to do these two-person visits or find these sort of things. But we have to realize we may not have any other option. We may not have any other option.
Absolutely. And
Um,
one thing I would encourage everyone to do is reach out to your local police department and see if you can come in either for a ride along and just pick those officers' brains. If you can take part of our training as a role player, I know we offer defensive tactics for officers. Maybe if you can sit into a class like that, we're fortunate enough here that with our hospital, we work security, as a side job, and we have a good relationship with them. So I know that if a nurse approached me and said, "Hey, how can you make me safer?" I would go above and beyond to try to help them accomplish that. I don't think that there's many cops out there that wouldn't jump at the chance to try to help, someone that we work so closely with.
I think that's a great point. Is that we just don't ask sometimes. We have these amazing resources right in front of us that we're community, neighbors, family members that have that knowledge that we need. We just have to ask. We just have to ask.
Absolutely.
John Leo Riley again. Organizations must make time for training, otherwise lawsuits tragedy will make time for you. That's
Yeah.
and I honestly I couldn't imagine what the leadership of these organizations went through. I've had terrible situations happen that were not patient related, but we had tragedy with our employees, and the wrong employee being taken out of the situation can hurt your whole organization tenfold, right? I mean, I'm sure Joyce was, as a case manager, not just one patient. She was seeing one patient, but I'm sure she had 15 other ones that she was
Sure.
seeing on a regular basis. She had
Right.
touched hundreds of other people on a regular basis. And, no fault of anybody's, this bad situation where now she's not able to do what she was called to do. And hopefully this episode, more conversations about these sort of topics. And all of you out there that have been watching the training that we're going to be doing moving forward, because now that we know, we have to put it into action. An ounce of preparation is worth more than a pound of cure, right? So now we're going to be training for this. Hopefully we'll see less injuries, less assaults, less dangerous environments, but we should be prepared.
Absolutely. And again, just to reiterate how important it is to get in that right mind frame as you're walking up to the door. Okay, where am I going to position myself? What dangers am I possibly going to face? Just run through that 15-minute checklist of just preparing your mind in case that worst case situation happens. And then you can go about your day. But the thing is, when you hit that fight or flight, muscle memory takes over because you've already thought about it. You've run through that scenario in your mind. That is how your body's going to respond. So just that small amount of, okay, if something happens, I can run this way, I can run that way. My tools are, I've got my flashlight here, I've got my pen here, and keep them in the same spots. I carry my flashlight in the same pocket, I carry my pen in the same pocket. That way I don't need to think when it comes time. So just, take those small steps, and I think you'll see great results.
Awesome. Officer Manis, thank you so much for coming on our show today. This has been a great episode. We had so many responses, so many people reaching out. We really appreciate all the interaction. Arlene, couldn't do it without you. What an amazing opportunity to sit here and just hear such great information that we can use starting tomorrow. So I hope you all learned as much as I did. And thank you again for listening to Off the Cuff, All Things Healthcare. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.